my lovely people. Welcome back to A Black Cat's Voice. I'm your host, Kat, here with a brand new episode for you. And on today's episode, I would like to address a topic that is very sensitive to me because it's happened to me several times in my life. And I just really think it needs to be talked about. So the title of this episode is called Groomed, right? And for those of you that don't know what grooming is, grooming is basically when someone gets somebody that is younger than them ready to do stuff that they are probably not ready to do. It's like mentally, physically, emotionally, really in a predatory sense, like preparing a person for trauma, unfortunately. So my own acronym for Groomed I came up with is going really out of order, manifesting emotional destruction. Because it's like, when you're being groomed, like, it happens all the time. And a lot of the time it's ignored. Like, we all are aware of course, the growner or older men coming after little girls, stuff like that. But it's like, how come nobody ever addresses or protects in the same way our little boys? How come more, and not saying nobody does it, but I think it should be more talked about, the predatory and grooming behaviors that a lot of women exhibit on younger boys. Like, why are you telling this little boy, he's your little boyfriend? Why as a grown adult are you calling a child your little boyfriend? Why are you telling him how handsome he is and how you can't wait for him to get older? Like, if that was a man doing that to a little girl, it'd be a problem, right? But is that not considered grooming for a little boy? Especially for our young men, why are they encouraged so much to, have crushes or like, yeah, he a ladies' man, or yeah, all the girls like him? Like, why are they encouraged to be adults, before they're ready? It's not fair to little boys. Like, I feel like little boys need the same protection that little girls do. Like, protect our children from predators, period. Because a lot of grooming happens right, in front of people. And unfortunately, another type I would like to talk about of grooming is from one child to another. It happens in families sometimes. It can happen in, foster homes. Like, it can happen in a lot of ways. And you will have children that are supposed to be the big cousin, the big brother, whoever it's supposed to be. And they'll be introducing your child to stuff that your child is not ready for, or stuff your child may not have thought about. And it'll be like, oh, this is our little secret, or oh, this is our little game we play. And you're just getting them ready for more stuff they're not going to be prepared for. Like, kids need to be kids. And one way that you can protect children is watch how they play with other children. Because don't think that just because somebody is a child that they're always innocent, or that they're always being raised the same way. Because unfortunately, a lot of children have been groomed early enough that they influence other kids. And it's a lot of, craziness happening. And just please, what I'm emphasizing with this is, please protect our babies. Please protect our children. Protect them little boys how you protect them little girls. Because predators, like children. It doesn't matter, of the gender or none of that. Like, protect our babies, please. Because having to grow up early has such an impact on your life. Like, there's also forms of adult grooming that I would like to talk about. Like, I experienced even myself, right? So growing up as a child, to watch out for the predators, watch out for people who are, way older than you, old enough to be your dad, that are after you. But nobody talks about the predators that are just 8, 9, 10, just a couple years older than you, that will make it seem like they have their life so together, and that they will try to build this attachment with you because they know where your mind is at mentally, just so they can groom you. It's very predatory, and you don't even realize what's happening until you're out of the situation. Like, I can use myself as an example. When I was in my early 20s, I was dating someone who was much older than me, and when we first got together, like, I'm telling you, when we first got together, it was a completely different relationship because I'm in my early 20s, and you don't realize till you get past them ages, till you get past, being 18, 19, anything I would say under 25, you don't realize until you pass that stage of life, you really not grown yet. You think you are, but you're really not. You're what I would call a baby adult. So yes, you may have life experience, yes, you may have knowledge, but there's so much of life you have not seen yet, and a predator knows that, and they prey and peek into that, and they will see the things that you need help with or that you'll be worried about, and they will pretend to help you just so you can get attached to them. Like, it's so many forms of grooming, and one of the ways you'll realize it is how the relationship shifts. Like, for me, in my experience, when I was still that little girl who didn't really have goals, just okay with just living life, here and there, when I didn't have the same goals, when I didn't have the same self-esteem about myself, I'm gonna carry myself this way, I'm gonna talk this way, when I started to really grow up and become a woman, it ruined this relationship because I had to realize, damn, this whole time I'm thinking I found a partner that wants a wife, and it's like, no, you wanted a little girl, because a person that's a predator and a person that's older than you, not all the time, but every time a person is a predator, they want a little girl, So when you grow up and you become a woman and you start to realize certain things and you don't accept the same things you would have accepted, in your early 20s, you don't move about life, the same way you would have. You don't even have the same goals or the same mindset once you experience so much of life, and that will blow up your relationship when you're with a predator, And I had to realize I didn't have somebody who wanted a partner. I had somebody who wanted a little girl. So once I became a woman, it was too much, And I'm just saying all this to say that you have to be aware. You have to really be aware. Not every person is the same. Not every situation is the same. I've seen people who have 10, 15, 20-year age gaps and have the healthiest, most beautiful relationships, as well as I've seen people a few years apart or the same age destroy each other. Every plane is based on, the people in it. Every relationship is based on the people within that dynamic. But the best thing for you to do is to be aware, because age does not always equal wisdom. Just because somebody is older does not mean they're wiser. And if you feel uncomfortable with how someone's treating you or with how somebody's making you feel about yourself, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to reevaluate, your relationship. It's okay to really wake up and think like, hey, are these things that I wanted to do and conscious decisions that I made? Or did I have somebody, always putting a battery in my back and charging me up and telling me this is how I should be moving, this is what I should be doing, and influencing me in a negative way, and being groomed is just basically being influenced in a negative way by somebody older than you, because they old enough to know better than what they doing, and they doing it anyway. But you young enough that you really don't know what's going on, and it's sad. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. But through growth, through prayer, through understanding, you gain discernment. And as you gain discernment, you know who you can trust, and know that, it's okay to have certain rules. If you feel like, hey, I don't want to put up with this or that, I don't want to entertain this or that, it's okay, because even for me, I didn't realize until I was, out of my, until I was out of a situation where I was being preyed upon. That's when I realized I was being preyed upon. Because you'll have people Like, perfect example, when it come to business, they'll say, no, I'll do it for you. Don't worry about it. I'll do it for you, and you'll think the whole time the person is helping you, but they're handicapping you. Because if you were helping me, you would show me how to do it myself, so I don't always have to come to you for the help. You know what I mean? And a lot of times people show you and introduce you to stuff so you can just be attached to them. It's not really so they could help you. Like, when it comes to life, just please be aware, trust them gut instincts, have your standards for yourself, and know that even if you were groomed, you can still grow out of that situation, So know that not everybody older than you has your best interest at heart. And that's just the truth of life, You got to watch out for people. And when you're old enough to know better, you have to do better. That's why for me, because I've been groomed and preyed upon by so many people as a child and as a young adult, now I have the wisdom that when I see people younger than me getting ready to make the same mistakes or the same moves, I try to educate them so they don't, go through the same humiliation. I'm not going to sit here, and this is my thing as well. Like, it's predatory for the older person, because it's just like for people who are in dynamics where it's an inappropriate age gap. Like how Marcus Houston and his girl, they said he met her before she was 18 and now they got 2 kids, but he's like 20 years older than her or something like that. That's a perfect example of how it's just like, even if she was consistently coming after him, consistently pursuing him, he was old enough to know better. He was old enough to tell her no, and he still decided not to, So it's always predatory when you old enough to know better and you still don't do better. You still don't do better. You're wrong for that. You're wrong for that. And a lot of people will use their age or their talent or whatever the case may be to prey upon you, So it don't matter who it is. If it's a kid, if it's an adult, if it's a child, look, if you feel a certain uncomfortability or a way about somebody, pay attention to that. Pay attention to children and how they act with each other. Pay attention to how adults your age act. Pay attention to how people who are older than you treat you. You got to pay attention to all these things, because you never want to put yourself in situations that you can't get out of, especially if you could prevent it early on. Watch out for grooming, y'all. And if you were groomed like I was, I'm so sorry. And if nobody ever told you, I want you to know I'm so sorry that happened to you. And you didn't deserve for that to happen to you. But you can always grow from it. And there is always growth, which my acronym for growth is grand realizations of why things happen. Growth. So heal yourself, love yourself, be aware, use your discernment. And yeah, if you would like to read more about, just my experiences as an adult, going through these different things and even healing myself from these different things, you can always check out my poetry collections, check out my books on my website. And to whoever's listening, I just want to say thank you once again for being here. Thank you for listening. And be good to yourselves.